Open the soft brown cover, looking at the image of my father's father and his holy mother, and the long-lost brother who never left a word since he went away. There was a man to be set in his ways, just like on my better days. There was a railroad family, just about as tight as they could naturally be now. There was a country as clean as the rivers that carried their names, as clean as the first snow that covered their graves, just like on my better days. Lay down, children, all your better days. They come and go. They come and go. No, they don't come back again.
Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app to your smartphone and stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. And we can't thank you enough for making this part of your day today. And it's becoming a bit of a ritual. Every Monday morning, I get a chance to sit down with my surrogate uncle, a great drummer, a guy who's had his hand in about 19 different cookie jars, if not more, along the way. He continues to groove on in today's world in his own way, doing his thing. Denny Seiwell, welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you, Jake. Another Marathon Monday.
We'll see how long we can stretch these. I'm having a ball. I'm sorry that I ran a little bit late
too.
there. Yeah.
Was that Gary McFarlane's album?
Yes, with Peter Smith, and it listed you as in. There's some bossa stuff on there. There's actually a Desafinato, which is the first tune that Getz had that was monstrous, and I figured that was you playing, but it was pretty sparse. This one lists you and Sammy Brown as double drums, but I don't know.
Sam Brown was a guitar player.
It says Sammy K. Brown. I know Sam Brown, the guitar player. So
Yeah, geez, I don't know who that would have been.
Gary McFarlane? There's this thing called he the pop star that he should have been that never was. I mean,
right?
Yeah. I know that you were into the jazz scene, but how did you originally connect with Gary?
Let me see. How did that actually start? I met him. There was a place. I mean, you could do a whole interview on Jim and Andy's.
Well, no, exactly. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
But that was a bar where all of the studio musicians would hang out in between dates, especially if you lived out of town or you lived on the outskirts of town, you come into the center of town to work every day. And the original one was on 48th Street above Manny's Music. No, it was next to Manny's Music. On the roof of Jim and Andy's was 799 A&R Recording Studios, not 799. They built. Geez, I'm really.
No. This is really important. No, this is very important. So A&R.
Yeah.
A&R, I dig.
Above Jim and Andy's. It might have been a building over, but it was on 48th Street. That was the old one where I went to my very first recording session. Russ Savakis took me to see what it was like to record. And I went in, it was a small orchestra. It's on the roof of this building, the top floor. And it was a small orchestra, and Gary Chester was playing drums. It was a Burt Bacharach session with Dionne Warwick. They were recording Do You Know the Way to San Jose?
Wow.
And Gary was right next to the strings and and playing with a stick and a brush so quietly, but so intense. And it just blew my mind. So that was my first look at the New York recording studio situation. And it really opened my eyes greatly to how good you had to be to do that stuff.
I want to just read, and I want to read.
Yeah,
I want to. This is just funny because I'm not sure. In between our first and second interviews, I connected with Gordon Edwards, the bass player, most known from Stuff, but I mean just a monster studio player. And I transcribed this the other day. He said, and I put it up on Facebook. I said we spent most of our time at Jim and Andy's, which was a pub on 50th Street and 8th Avenue. Then someone said it was 112th, 48th Street. But in any event, he said, this is the classic line, and I want to know if this played out for you. He said, it had a payphone that was hooked up to Radio Registry. We'd sit there, play cards, and have drinks. We'd have our checks, and we'd cash them with Jim and Andy. The phone would ring, and they'd say, hey, we need a trumpet player with a Broadway sound. Oh, yeah, you're here, go. I mean, did that played out for you as well once you got into the scene?
Absolutely. It was the home.
Wow.
You could go in there at any hour of the day or night and find a great orchestra or a band to go make a recording with you.
Do you remember?
And there was the phone from Radio Registry, which was our answering service. And that when they closed on 48th Street, they moved over to 55th between Broadway and 8th, or was it 7th and 8th? But it was closer to 8th Avenue. I forget the address. But Jim Couliveris was the owner of that. And you went in there, you could cash your checks, you could borrow money if you needed money. If Jim loaned a lot of guys, there was a guy that had his set of vibes stolen once.
Wow. And
Jim said, well, how much does it cost to buy another set of vibes so you can work? And the guy said, well, I need about $1,500 to get some vibes. And Jimmy pulled out a wad and just gave him the $1,500. And there was also times that if Jim would loan you money and you couldn't pay him back because times were thin, he would get you a job. He knew everybody in that town.
Wow, what a beautiful cat, man.
Oh man, he was on the cover of Life magazine, I think it was, wearing a New York Yankees uniform. It was the only time we saw him out of his black pants and white shirt. You know, he always wore the same thing, man. And this bar was just so friendly. Rocky, he had a Rocky with a. He had a beautiful face, this little old man with a handlebar mustache and everything. Rocky would pour, he was the bartender there. And Gary, that's where I met Gary, actually. We're looping back around to Gary McFarland.
Sure.
Gary would come in and he'd say, hey, Rocky, give me a cognac. No cigar ashes in it this time, It was just...
Clean glass.
It was the friendliest place in the world. And you walk in, and there was a jukebox that was stacked with the best music on the planet. Not your regular jukebox by any means. And it was usually going, and there'd be, 5 or 10 tables along the left side and a long bar on the right side. And then there was a room behind it where you could actually store your instrument cases. There was like a closet where you could leave your cymbal bag or a saxophone or something. And then the phone on the wall from Radio Registry, which we were all using that service. And whenever a musician was needed, they would call radio, and radio would call Jim's. And if there was somebody there, bang, you had a gig.
Did Gary have like the looks of a pop star? I mean, I just saw this.
Oh, he was.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was amazing. He was a very handsome, long, flowing hair in the wind, everything short of wearing a cape, He was always dressed impeccably. He was a great guy, a great composer and arranger. Oh my God, his arrangements were just so unique. He was more like a California guy misplaced in New York,
Well, also, did he just not want to conform to the pop world? I mean, his stuff, some of the stuff you listen to that he played was pretty, it was jazz in my mind, This Peter Smith album, though, is burning. I used to have it, and it was before I connected with Seiwell. Next time I find it, it will never leave my possession. This is a hot album. I dig it.
Is that butterscotch rum?
Butterscotch rum, and it's got my man Russell George on fiddle, who actually is a
Right.
ridiculous upright bass player. And then Tony Levin on bass, Stuart Scharf
Right.
on guitar, and then
Yeah.
this is the other. I wanted to read this to you because it goes back to a good buddy of yours. This is from Mike Maynari. My interview with him, he said, in 1965, Donald McDonald, Warren Bernhardt, and I began looping. They began looping. They would sit, get high, and play a gig. They'd sit there for days going through tapes of the gigs that we recorded. We'd cut up these tapes, and they'd say, this would work with this, and this would work with that. And they turned out to be very interesting loops. And while we were playing with Jeremy Steig, Jeremy Steig would have a coloring sheet, and as we'd be playing, he'd be drawing. Slowly, these beautiful drawings would just appear on a silk screen. We were experimenting early on when I used pickups on the bars of my vibraphone so I could go through wah-wah pedals and various other fuzz tones. And I was like,
Yeah.
I'm like, Seiwell, I'm like, okay, so we have tapestries, we have drawing, coloring sheets, and now we know looping. You go to any concert now, and almost anywhere you go, you get people that are looping, but that stuff was going on. They were cutting up analog tape, and you were close with Warren Bernhardt, is that right?
I was close with all those guys. We worked together. I can't say replaced Donald, but they called me sometimes. If Donald, the latter years of his life, he became slightly you couldn't count on him to show up.
Right.
Right.
Unreliable.
And so through Joe Beck, I got to work with Mike Maneri a lot, and Warren Bernhardt and all of those guys. I remember hearing Jeremy Steig and the Satyrs down at Vanguard one night, and I was just blown away.
Denny Zeitlin was on piano, maybe? I don't even know if he was still there.
I don't know. I think it would have been Warren.
That's
I'm
right,
not sure
the Satyrs.
Who it was.
Wow.
But it was that gang. That was my introduction to New York, and I was just knocked out with the musicianship and the brilliance of these guys.
Could you talk about the most multi-sensory musical kind of experience you had? I mean, whether you were looping, whether you were playing behind soundscapes or colorscapes, just what was that for Denny Seiwell?
Well, there wasn't a lot of that kind of stuff. When I would get called, it was just to go in and do anything from jazz to samba to pop, and it didn't involve a lot of that looping. But one thing that came to mind when you mentioned that was Mike Maneri used to have a jingle company. I think it was called GNU Music, and he was doing an American Express spot, and it was at 799 A&R, the new A&R, which was on 7th Avenue. It's a big room. It's a big, beautiful room, very famous recording studio. So, I go up there, and we used to have a little guy that moved our drums around. Doopy was his name. And it was early cartage. Nobody was doing this because the guitar players and bass players, they would buy an amp and leave it in a studio.
Right.
And so every studio had a guitar or a bass amp, and they gave you a key to unlock it when you went there to record. But drums were house drums that were terrible. And I started using double-headed drums that had clear heads sometimes, but I kind of made a lot of engineers crazy because I gave more of a sound boom rather than like hitting a dead body or something. And so Doopy delivered my drums to A&R. I told him I was working there. He delivered them. So I show up at the studio. Mike's got this date, and there's Mel Lewis, Grady Tate, Phil Krause. I think he was this beautiful percussionist.
Dude, that cat was
symphony.
everywhere, man. He was one of the indigenous cats.
Montego Joe.
Whoa.
There were like 5 or 6 drummers, and I look out into the room, and there's a riser in the middle of the room with baffles around it, and my drum kit is there. And I say to Mike, I says, "What the hell is this?" He says, "Yeah, those guys are playing hand instruments. You're the drummer on this gig."
Oh,
I went,
my.
"What?" Well, I crapped my pants a few times.
Grady Tate was playing hand drums on this?
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. That is beautiful. Yeah, so you were freaking out, but you got the...
And my hero, I mean, my main man, Mel Lewis, you know.
Oh, definitely. Mel Lewis
he was the guy that really... What broke my heart about those days is because, I played the bossa nova thing. I learned it kind of like the Brazilian guys play it. It's more straight than swingy. And in those days when rock and roll was just coming to the fore in the studio world and the pop culture and everything, they used to call me for a lot of that light rock stuff because I played it straighter than the jazz guys. And inadvertently, I took a lot of work away from guys like Mel Lewis and stuff that would usually get that call.
Well, yeah, I mean, Mel wasn't. I mean, Mel's credits are pretty intense. I mean, I don't think that
really.
They're pretty deep. I mean,
yeah.
So
and then
I want to hear
meeting Mel. He hooked me up with Gretsch Drums, and I got an endorsement with Gretsch Drums in 1970. And Mel used to get the Kraft Music Hall. Sometimes they would record on Monday night, and several times he called me up. He'd say, "Hey man, I got to go in and do the Kraft Music Hall tonight. You want to go down and play the first two sets with the big band tonight?" I went, "Yes, I do." Now talk about, I don't remember what word you used in that last question, but that was one of the thrills of my life, an absolute thrill to go down and play with the Thad Jones Mel Lewis Jazz Orchestra.
You played with Richard Davis?
Yep, Richard Davis, Roland Hanna on piano.
That is the most magical thing ever. Because
Jerry Dodgen, Jerome Richardson, Snooky Young, Jimmy Nepper, all of those cats. It was unbelievable.
It's interesting. That is so powerful stuff. And there were so many cats that, I mean, was it a situation where you knew that when you were on the bandstand that there were cats in the audience looking and checking you out because they wanted your gig? It was that kind of competition that was going on. Not necessarily with the big band stuff, but I mean there were people. Sometimes people would say that they were like, they had to play their ass off because they knew that somebody out there was looking for their gig.
Yeah. Well, that existed. I didn't feel that. I came to town, I just wanted to make it. If you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. But, it was one of those things where I was put in situations that raised the bar for me totally to give my best performances just about every time I went to work. And so I was just thinking of that. I wasn't thinking about becoming the number one gun in town, or that somebody was out there listening to what I played and saying that they could do it better and trying to cop my gig. So I was just really, it was such an exciting time in my life. It absolutely was the highlight and the best memories of my early years as becoming a studio musician.
This is the other, just to put a wrap on this, because Mainieri, he said, because I was producing and arranging on quite a few projects, I had access to some of the large studios in New York. I used to call cats and ask if they were free to jam that night to jam. We'd have 5 guitar players, McCracken, Spinoza, Brown, Bob Mann, Joe Beck, 2 drummers, Donald McDonald, Steve Gadd, and 2 or 3 bass players, Tony Levin, Chuck Rainey. Then there'd be a horn section with Randy Brecker, Faddis, Lou Soloff, George Young, Ronnie Kruger. Yeah. Whoever would fall by just would come in, and I'd have these grooves written out with little horn arrangements and 4 or 5 singers. Mm-hmm. That turned into an album called White Elephant. But were you? I mean, you? I don't think you were on White Elephant, but that was that was the crew, man. I mean, that was the crew, and
that's after I left, I believe, because if
you're right,
Steve
you're
Gadd
spot
was
on
it.
You're spot on.
Steve Gadd came to town right after I left to move to London to work with Paul, and same with Rick Marotta. They both came to town after I left, and I'm glad they waited till I left because they would have taken all my work away.
Well, that is so fascinating to know. So when did you first get to jam with the most beautiful cat who hooked me up with you was Richard T. Bear. Did you hang with Bear when he was in Yonkers? Because he was in Yonkers for a minute.
We didn't know each other in New York, no.
But you were the
We
cat
played together
before
today.
Murata.
We're playing this month, you know.
What do you mean you're playing this month? Where are you playing?
T-Bear, we're playing out here in Malibu. Now, T-Bear's wife is ill.
Yep.
I hate to bring that up, but that gig is kind of pending, depending on her health, I'm sure. But anyway, we're all saying great prayers for Nina. We hope she pulls through this, but she's.
I love Richard. I love his family. But I mean,
yeah.
It was like, so at that point, it was Donald McDonald, you.
Yep.
Before Gad came to town, it
Yep.
was you and Don. And Don, was Don Lamont still around, or was it, who else was still there?
No, Herb Lavelle, Bill Lavorgna, Ronnie Zito, Purdy, Alan Schwartzberg, of course. Let me think.
That's right. That's absolutely what it was. Yeah, no, that's who it was.
Yeah.
I have
Elliot Zygmunt, he was doing a lot of stuff, and Don McDonald was very busy too. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you. I just when I was perusing, I was trying to find some rare nuggets for you today, and I go onto this site and I find this show from November of '78 with Butter and Danko, and then I looked. It was at the Golden Bear, and then I looked down and I'm like, okay. I said, it says guest appearances by Gary Busey, and I'm like.
Right.
I found this album on Epic Records from '65. It's like a psych folk album from Ohio. I forget the name of the band now. Busey on drums. So that dude loved.
He was a drummer.
Can you talk about? I mean, did Busey used to show up at these gigs? Because I was laughing that he showed up at this gig.
Yeah, well, he was part of that whole hang. The Malibu, the Danko madness, and everything. I've worked with Rick for several years, actually, and we had a band. We had his solo career. We made a couple of records with Rick, and we toured quite a bit, actually. And I don't remember what year it was. It wasn't '78, maybe '79 or '80. We actually had a touring unit with Busey, Butter, and Danko.
What?
And this was right after.
God.
This was right after the Buddy Holly show came out.
Right.
Movie came out, and Gary used to get up and do probably 6 tunes every set of the Buddy Holly stuff with us, and he was quite good. He really pulled it off. But in the past, he was a drummer. I think he played with Leon Russell in that whole Tulsa time years ago.
I'm gonna pull this album up right now. I mean, but he was actually singing and not playing.
Oh, he did a great job singing and playing guitar.
Unbelievable.
And that band, we toured Japan. We toured all over the States. We did the tour of Japan. We had 2 drummers. We had, Greg Thomas was the other drummer.
Yeah, where's that? That cat's he was a badass drummer. Though
he was.
Is he still with us?
One of the Woodstock gang.
Is he still?
I'm not sure if he had some serious health problems a couple of years ago. I used to see him every once in a while, but I haven't seen him in a long time now. I'm not sure if he's with us anymore.
Well, let me I just found this album because I want to hit this. I'm going to send this link to you. The name of the album is called Carp, C-A-R-P, on Epic from 1970. John Crowder on bass, Ron Getman on guitar, Glenn Mitchell on piano, Gary Busey on drums, and steel guitar by Sneaky Pete.
Yeah,
I mean, this is so many. I mean, they always say. I mean, athletes want to be music stars or musicians. So many music. Have you come across a lot of actors that dabbled in or played music really well, played an instrument really well?
Oh, sure. There's every other actor you know just wants to be in a band. It's probably a little bit easier than what they do, I think, but it doesn't pay as much.
No, not even close.
But yeah, Busey was a good musician, and I haven't seen him in a little while now, but he was always fun. You know, you never knew what he was going to. And when you put Busey with Paul Butterfield and Rick Danko, oh my God, it was madness. We did, I think it was 5 nights in Hollywood at the Roxy, and because it was going to create such a stir in town, we couldn't use the dressing room upstairs that was so small. So I guess A&M Records rented us 2 mobile homes to be in the parking lot as our dressing room, and because everybody fell by, and those shows were amazing. It was a 2.5-hour rock and roll revival, and they really were. I have a couple of tapes of those days that are sensational.
Well, I mean, you might need to get that stuff out. I mean, that is fantastic. I would love to. Was it 1980 you're saying that was, or late 70s?
Yeah, it was. I don't remember 79, 80, or that period. It was right around there. I remember sitting in one of the dressing rooms one night with Ringo Starr. I mean, we were just hanging in there. You know, he came back to just hang out and get away from the crowd, and Jerry Moss tried to walk into our trailer, and I said, "Hey, man, this is for band only. Get out of here." I didn't know that he paid for the trailers, you know. I didn't know who Jerry Moss was. What an idiot.
Well, I mean, yeah. It worked out.
They were great times, and it was a fun time. I mean, everybody in town stopped by to catch one of those shows, and they were pretty awesome. Marty Greb was in the band. Walt Richmond from Tulsa played the other keyboards. Jerry Peterson played the double saxes. Michael DeTemple, the guitar. There's a couple of clips on YouTube. We did an in-concert, I believe that's on YouTube, in Chicago, or was it?
No, it's funny. The first interview we did, I led in with there's a whole live show from the Capitol Theater in Passaic. And
well, there's another one though from an in-concert show that was actually even better. But yeah, you've seen it. It was a fun band. We had good material. Danko, which we loved Danko so much. Everybody in the band. His brother Terry was with us, and we called him Bingo Biondo. He was really he was full of fun. And he had such a beautiful heart, and he was so unique in his style of singing and playing the bass. You know, I really treasured those moments.
I mean, how did he? Did he just? I mean, he probably he wasn't dwelling on it, but I mean, how did he feel about like the breakup of the band itself? I mean, it always comes out that, you know, it was Robbie and Levon, but Danko was one of the catalysts to that group. I mean, how did he? Yeah. And because they eventually got back together, and it was so hot. I've interviewed those guys like Ron Ehoff and you know, the Kate brothers. Like, I love that second iteration, but there was nothing like the band. And
yeah, no.
And then he tried. How did he?
I'm sure it hit him pretty hard. I know that it hit him pretty hard. I mean, but he was struggling. I think the original record that we did might have been on Arista.
Oh yeah,
I'm not certain.
Well,
it's Rob Ferboni helped us produce it, and you know, we were just interested in making Rick a good solo record, and then it was so much fun that we decided to take it on the road and get out there and do it, and it was quite a trip. It was good.
Well, let's take a listen to this piece of music, and then this is a studio track, but then we'll come back and break it down.
Okay.
It's all small town talk. You know how people are. They can't stand to see someone else doing what they want to.
Well, I just, my question, I guess, the better question, that was Small Town Talk, Rick Danko, self-titled, 1977, Denny Seiwell on drums. Do you think he was...
77. Good.
Was he comfortable as a band leader?
Yeah.
He enjoyed it. I mean, he was an entertainer.
Well, we remember the nickname we had for him.
Bingo Biondo, yeah. Yeah, I've transcribed that. I love that story. He was...
Yeah, no, he was just a sweetheart, and yeah, he was very, very professional as a band leader, as far as whipping the band into shape and the tunes that we picked and everything, and yeah, he was more than proficient.
It's just, one guy I wanted to ask you about was Blondie Chapin. Did you ever get a chance to, because he was playing with Rick for a minute, but then I look at the rhythm section and I'm like, I don't see Denny on drums.
Never worked with Blondie. I've met him over the years and did a few charity events where we'd see each other. I might have even played with him, but I'd never recorded with Blondie, no.
Interesting.
Very talented man.
Yeah,
Very
absolutely. Well, this is the one thing I wanted to talk about was this whole experience with Janice. Could you break down this this thing, the release of the album seems to have been broken up into several different different sessions, but I want to know how you fit into it.
Okay. It's quite a trip, actually. The excuse me, the Big Brother, Elliot Mazer, at his Master's Wheels in San Francisco, said that the estate of Janice had contacted him, and they had some live performances of Janice that they wanted to put together into a record. And unfortunately, the Janice's recording was she was right on the money the whole time, but the band with her, I guess it was Big Brother, a lot of the stuff was unusable for whatever reason, and would Elliot replace the band and keep Janice's vocals? So he asked us to do that. That was the band that I had in San Francisco with Henry McCulloch and Chrissy Stewart and Mick Weaver. And so we went into Elliot's studio and we fooled around until we found a way to balance the headphones that we heard Big Brother on the left side of our phones, us on the right side, and Janice in the middle. And we did, I don't remember how many tracks, 3, 4, 5 tracks, something like that appeared on the record, actually. And we just replaced places where, for whatever reason, whether it was recorded wrong or whatever, it was unusable, and made it usable. So that's how that happened, and it was very, here we are, the lights are low in the studio, and we're in there playing with somebody who's no longer there. And Henry had one of those stolen weekends with Janice back around the Woodstock festival time.
Right.
And I just look over at Henry, and his eyes would be closed, and he'd be playing, and there'd be tears streaming down. It was quite an emotional recording, especially knowing that you were doing something that had some real weight to it,
Did you have an idea? So just to be clear, these were studio tracks that had never been released because it just never mixed properly with the original.
Live tracks.
They were live tracks. How do you? So talk about the mentality going in. I was going to ask you about that as well as it relates to your current trio, but just when you're given a job to say, okay, this was live, and we can't obviously replicate it because she's gone. What are the most important things, aside from making it feel good, how do you increase the sonic nature of it if you're just in your master's wheels?
Well, I mean, we became the rhythm section for those tracks that we played on, and we were just using Janice's vocals as a guide more than anything, because as I said, she was really right on the money. She was probably higher than everybody, but she was right on the money.
Wow.
Her time, her pitch, everything about that performance was right on the money. So we used her vocal as a guide, and we'd have bleeding through would be a little bit of the live band at the time, but we would have enough of our new parts that we were creating at the time in one of the sides of our earphones where we could hear ourselves and hear Janis and then try to lock in that way.
Not easy, I don't think.
No, but it's just musicianship. If you do it enough, it becomes easier and easier.
What about your this trio? I mean, you sent me those tracks and they sound great. I mean, is the band discernibly different in a live setting? I could see the just wheel on fire when it's live. I mean, I could just see it burning and going places that it wouldn't necessarily go in the studio.
That's what you get whenever you hear the Denny Seiwell trio.
I want to see. That's what I'm saying. I want it to go into the ether. I mean, I mean, you want to make it understandable on a CD, but there's something about it. Almost seems like we got to this point in the industry where it's like just play it safe, and the only times that you really can't play it safe are when you're playing live, when you can actually cut loose.
That's why we called our very first record that we did, I don't know, 6-7 years ago. It's called Reckless Abandon. And that title best represents how this trio plays. The first time I got these guys together, it was magic. And I said, wow, let's just go over to my house and record and see what happens. So I talked to the guys, and they said, John and Joe both said, yeah, I'd love to, man. So they'd come over, and I had to have a little Pro Tools rig in my second bedroom. It's quite a good-sized room. And we set everything up live. I had drums in the corner, plugged the organ and the guitar directly in, and had an engineer sit at my desk, and we thought we'd just, for the heck of it, we'd try recording it. And it was coming out so good that we did that I think we did 10 or 11 songs in 3 or 4 3-hour sessions where they'd just come over for a couple hours in the afternoon, and we'd record 2, 3, 4 tracks, and we just keep doing that whenever anybody was available. We'd get together and pick a couple of tunes we wanted to do, and it was John Cudini, the guitar player, that came up with the idea. Well, you're best known for your work with McCartney. Why don't we take some of his songs and revamp them for the jazz genre?
Wow.
And so on Reckless Abandon, I believe there's 5 McCartney tracks on there, Bip Bop and When the Night? No, Bip Bop, Coming Up. We did Dear Friend, the beautiful ballad he'd written to John Lennon. There's a couple more. I'd have to have the song list.
Yeah, I'm looking actually. I'm trying to. It's funny. Denny Seiwell. You have credits, but on All Music, but you're lacking an actual discography, which is ridiculous. But I'm going to have to. It
was really a good record, and it was made. It was made overnight. In a month's time, we got together whenever anybody would. If we were all 3 available, we'd just come on over. Let's do some more recording. The engineer would show up. Bang, we'd just knock it out, and then I manufactured it myself. Got the rights to using all of the material. Paul just about gave me the rights to all of that. We got licensing agreements and everything, and I manufactured the record and just put it out on my website. And when I would go to the Beatle Fest to make an appearance at the Beatle Fests, and I would say I brought a CD along if any of the fans wanted to pick it up, and it was a jazz CD, and then nobody was interested. And they're Beatle fans. So the next time I got to plug it at one of these events, I say, oh, by the way, there's 5 McCartney songs on there. And then they came and snatched a lot of them up. And over the years, I just sell it on my website. But it's something that I'm real proud of. It was really a nice recording. And that was the birth of the trio. We played together for 6-7 years now, and we don't work very often because of their schedules. It's to find a gig that we can all be free for that's the hardest part with this group, because both these guys are very busy, And then this friend of a friend and a new label showed up, and he said, well, what would it cost to make a record? And I said, well, not a whole lot of money, believe me. And a label called QVR, Bruce Quarto and Quarto Valley Records, gave us enough money to just go in and do it right, and went into a great studio and had Al Schmidt mix it for us at Capitol. And I'm really proud of this new record. We had 3 rehearsals at my house here where we hung out 2-3 hours and just ran through some of the tunes. And John brought between John Cudini and Joe Bagg, they both brought in about 6 of the 12 songs, and they were very demanding, very challenging musically. So on the dates that we recorded, we were still reading. We were reading charts. It was quite complicated music. It doesn't sound it when you hear the record, but it was really one of the best recordings of my life, I must say. It was so much fun playing with these guys, and we get along well. It's fun to hang. It's fun to make music with them, and there's definitely magic there.
I mean, it sounds like the songs sound like you haven't over-rehearsed them, but they sound super well put together, and you guys make it. If you're, it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't sound like it's flat, but it's also like it sounds like it almost is perfect. There's something about recording technology today. Al Schmidt, who am I to, the guy's a freaking legend. But there's something about the recording processes today. I wanted to just talk to you about that specifically because I used to get hung up on the whole analog digital thing. But cats like Danny Korchmar were like, has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with mic placement, where you're placing. And I wanted you to talk, put your producer hat on and talk a little bit about the best way to, because the old school guys would, they maybe would get the cats in a room and hear who needs a little bit more of this. They'd mic the room based off of that, and then they'd hit and record. But I just wanted you to talk about mic placement and how it can lend itself to brightness in the music and just more bottom end. I'm searching for more bottom end.
Right. Well, first of all, when we recorded this album, which is, I think we're going to be using the title Boomerang on it.
I love it.
And it's because
you're coming back to your jazz roots.
Out,
yeah,
it comes back to you. It's kind of like my jazz career, So, but mic techniques is, it's knowing the right mic to put on the right instrument. In this particular instance, we recorded at NRG, and an engineer named Patrick Carrier did the recording, and we had John's guitar amp in a booth off to the side of a big room. We used a large room, and the same with Joe Bagg's Leslie cabinet was in a vocal booth that was behind the room. So we had isolation on the guitar and the organ, and then the drums were mic'd for the sambas and the stuff that had more Latin or pop stuff. We had a different way of miking the drums, and it was maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8 or 9 mics, not closely mic'd because we wanted to use the room sound as well. So that's the way we approached the miking the drums. And then halfway through the recording, we had 4 or 5 kind of, I wouldn't say bebop, but more traditional jazz kind of sound that we were going for. So I brought in the 18-inch bass drum and the small tom-toms, and we used a rendition of the Glyn Johns miking the drums, which is 3 microphones.
Right.
One above the drummer's head to the left, one behind the drummer to the right, and one in front of the bass drum, a few feet in front of the bass drum. So you get a boom rather than just a thud, And I think we added one mic to that around the snare drum just to get some of the quieter things that I was doing within those tunes. But so there's several different miking techniques in there, and that's a producer's job. The producer and the engineer put their heads together, and how do we get the sound that we're really looking for? And choosing the right microphones and placing them is of the utmost importance. If you do it wrong, you miss the boat. But when when I first recorded with Glyn Johns, and I heard the air that came while I was playing my parts, the air that was recorded along with the music, that just blew me away. So that
I'm sorry. Can you in a good way? It blew you away. Why?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because what it allows, if they tight mic all the drums, which has kind of been like a standard traditional way of doing pop music,
right?
Put a drum on everything, top and bottom of the snare drums, overheads, and tom-tom mics would have sometimes top and bottoms. All of a sudden, then it's up to the engineer to make it sound good. But if you have three mics and you're acoustically hearing the drums sound come from these three mics, what you're allowing to happen is for the drummer to balance his own sound, and you're capturing it as it plays, kind of. I got it.
It's fine. You're popular. It's Monday morning. We got our yeah. The did you there are these pictures, classic pictures of Tony Williams and then McLaughlin. I only say this because it has the same drums, guitar, and organ. It was Tony Williams, and just directly to his left was McLaughlin, and then facing them was Larry Young. I mean, did you guys have a similar? It was just the idea of everybody looking at each other. Was that the same kind of setup?
Exactly. Excuse me. This darn cold is still around out here in Los Angeles. It's real dry out here. But anyway, dry Arizona. You really know dry.
I don't. Yeah.
But anyway, we made it was a good-sized room, a quite large recording room that's beautifully acoustic. And we had the guitar in front of me. I would say 20, 30 feet to the right of him was Joe. And then we made like a V. So we were all looking at each other. And it was just, it was an ideal situation to record.
Well, let's take a listen. Can we play a tune off this off this?
Well, it's not released yet, but what tune are you going to play?
I was either between April Child or Kuramim.
Go ahead, play April Child. That's it's a Moacir Santos tune.
That's what I want.
Kind of a Brazilian tune that really John Cudini brought that song in as a possible for the album.
By the way, that dude is he's a badass player, dude.
Oh, he's.
Nasty.
Man, period.
Nasty. All right, so let's check out this Moacir.
Let me preface this. So, April Child was. It's a Brazilian rhythm that I was not aware of. It's called a maracatu. And it's this definite pattern that everybody plays on the record. And the first time I heard the tune, I went, wow, how did... I know Brazilian music pretty well, but I'd never heard of this, and I love it. So it took me a second or two to get it under my hands, so we could perform it. But it's one of my favorite tracks on that record.
All right, let's check it out. Music on the Jake Feinberg Show, brought to you by Abbott Taylor Jewelers, the Desert Heart Foundation of Southern Arizona, the Jewish Community Center of Southern Arizona, Craig Pretzinger of Allstate Insurance, and we thank them for their support so we can play tracks like that. April Child, originally written by Moacir Santos. Denny Seiwell, I mean, it was, you play that tune. Did you hear the original one with vocals? Apparently he sings on the original one.
We listened to it just to get that beat down, how it was implied, and then we changed it to fit our style a little bit more. But yes, brilliant song.
When you talk about Boomerang, I hear you like having to hold it down and then like kind of pull back. Like sometimes Bag's lines are so long that you have to stay back, right? You have to stay. I mean, can you talk about the patient?
No, not at all. But thank you. I mean, I really appreciate the fact that we got a track out there to be heard by people. But what's so unique about this trio is, they trade lines. They'll take half the line, and the other half the line it'll go from organ to guitar, and they trade lines back and forth rather than the old school of playing the head and then. The guitar would take a couple of choruses, then the organ would take a couple of choruses. So this is just so much more interesting musically to take these lines and break them up between the two of the guys. And also, this is the only song without drum breaks on it. The whole album they've made me reach deep into the well. We all reach deep into the well, but
into the Seiwell. You went into the Seiwell.
Yeah, I mean they were the Seiwell. Yeah, and we composed, we arranged all of the songs that there were vamps and stuff that I could play over, which isn't my favorite thing in the world, but they pulled the best out of me, and this is probably some of the best playing that I've got on record. Period. And this song has got no drum breaks or solos in it, so. So I really appreciate that we played that because it's just music, and it's the magic of these guys. All three of us just listen to each other so carefully. It's like a little big band. We play figures together, and that's what's so unique about this recording, actually. It's really something that I can't imagine any other records out there that follow that same sort of tradition,
There's a few things going through my head. I mean, what was you only did, like you said, you weren't prolific as far as a touring drummer, but in which setting was the setting where the audience, was there any setting where the audience was coming and they would not hear the songs played exactly the way they were cut on the album? Was there any group like that?
Well, maybe Astrud when we toured Japan, because every night was a little bit different. Because it tends to point towards the more jazz side of the samba and jazz. But most of the pop acts, you try to make it close to the record, leaving enough space to bring the identity of the band into it as well. So, Joan Armatrading, Rick Danko, even Paul. I mean, there was room for musicianship in all of the music that I was involved with, and hallelujah for that. If there wasn't, if it was just go out and play note for note what the recording was, that would leave you unsatisfied in a lot of ways.
Did you ever get a chance to cross paths with Sugarcane Harris?
I'm sorry, I didn't know.
Yeah, the violinist who played with he was in with Paul Lagos. Did you know that drummer Paul Lagos at all?
I didn't know.
Because he was in Kaleidoscope with David Lindley. It's just these guys were they were actually on the West Coast when you were still on the East.
I worked with David Lindley quite a bit out here.
Really?
When I first moved out here, we did some projects together. I don't remember what they were. It was just it was just a call, and boy, what a great musician he was.
He's a
Or is.
monster intellect too. I mean, the guy just
Yeah.
really can. Could you talk? It's funny. I believe the McCartneys still have a house in Tucson. But did you enjoy? Could you just talk about Linda McCartney's musical? I mean, you played with her on a couple of at least one album here. What was her?
Well, she played on everything.
She played on every. Wide Prairie, though, was I'm looking here, was her as a leader.
Yeah, it was her solo project that Paul put together. I'm not sure if that happened before or after she passed away, but let me see. She would have passed away in '99. When was that album?
It was 98. It was 98.
Okay. So that was just tracks that we had done with Linda. She was she came onto the band as Paul's right-hand man, if you will. I mean, he was going through that really sticky point in his life where he had to sue the other three Beatles to prove to the courts that their financial system was just all messed up and it needed to be straightened out. And it was probably the hardest period in his life. And that was back in the early days of Wings when we first formed the band. And Linda was asked to come on, and I think Paul just needed her there. And everybody knew that she wasn't a piano player that had expertise in playing the piano. He taught her everything that she needed to know to pull off the gig. And I think he just needed her there for her vibe more than anything, and the moral support to just push forward, because we were trying to do something that was quite unique. I mean, how do you put a band together, start from scratch after being a Beatle?
How do you do that? How do you do that?
Impossible task. Yeah, well, it was fun. That's what it was.
Exactly.
It was fun.
It wasn't a drag.
I mean, Paul and I had that background of making the Ram album, which was everything that anyone could ask for in a recording. It was an unbelievable experience for me, and we had such a great working relationship. And then Denny Lane was brought in. Denny was, he's really a great songwriter, singer, and guitar player, but he's definitely not a Hugh McCracken type of instrumentalist. And then Linda, and at first I thought, wow, this is really going to be a challenge. But trusting Paul's musical sense and judgment, we made some really, really good music, even though Linda wasn't a world-class piano player by any means. And she had a great rock and roll heart. She had a great rock and roll heart, and she tried her best. And I used to produce the vocal tracks when we'd be in recording with Wings, and I'd say, gather around the mic, guys. Let's get some background harmonies here. And then I made a joke one day that was kind of funny, but it was a little cold. I said, all right, Paul, we need you to move in, and Denny, we need you to move back, and Linda, we need you to move back a little further too. And she goes, how far? And I said, do you have a car? But
she had a good heart. But she was his wife at the time, or just a girlfriend at the time, or
oh no, they were married.
They were married. So he needed that.
Oh sure.
Yeah.
Well, they got married in 1969.
So he needed a rock there to keep him stable through these. I mean, even though
listen, if it wasn't for Linda McCartney, when that whole Beatle breakup thing was going down, Paul would have just stayed up at his farm and cuddled up with his guitar and a bottle of scotch. He would have just taken a pass on life for a little while, man.
Maybe never gotten back in the game.
She was the one that kicked him in the butt. She said, come on, you're a songwriter, you're an artist, you're an entertainer. Let's go. And that's what spurred him into writing the tunes that he wrote for the Ram album. And
wow.
Ram, she sang on all those background parts, he would double vocals with her and stuff, and get her in, get her to sing in tune and what have you. It was quite, she learned a lot in that, and she was a very important part of the Wings sound. Having a voice in there, in that register, and a female voice was a very important, crucial part of Wings sound. So later, when she was, it was laid on her to the task, the role of being the piano player in a four-piece band. You know, she was really nervous about it. She expressed to me several times, like, oh, geez, I don't know if I can do this. I said, you can do this. And I remember crying on my shoulder the night before our European tour, or the night of our European tour, the first gig. I said, it's going to be fine. Well, don't worry. We're going to do good, man. And she, over the years, she really took it upon herself to really learn her parts and play them with authority. And I'll tell you, being a mom and a wife, I've never seen anybody like that couple. Paul and Linda as a couple were just extraordinary human beings. Their kids were the most normal kids on the planet. I love the way they were family members first, you know, and that's the way they treated the band. We were a family. And so Linda got a lot of bad press and everything like that, undeservedly, because she was just there for her man.
Were they, people like myself were ripping her because she wasn't a top shelf musician? Why she got bad press because why?
Well, just because of that.
Yeah.
You know, why should a person like Paul McCartney have
right.
a non-professional person playing an important role in his band?
I dig. It's such a beautiful thing. It was a family band, and that's that's a beautiful. And over time, was there any finality during the Wings period to the legal action that Paul had to take against the rest of the group?
No, that didn't happen until several years after I left the band that got finished up. It concluded, yeah. Yeah, it was a long, ugly period of time, and there was a court receivership. The way I understand it, there was a court receivership put on all of Apple's funds. So anything that came into Apple just stayed there until it got worked out. And I don't know this for certain, but I heard rumors that because of the way the company was set up, that Brian Epstein had no idea that the Beatles organization was going to be as big as it was, and in the end, they owed 90% of the money to the government in taxes.
Jeez.
Just because they didn't do the right, tax dodge things in the beginning. So I don't know if any of this is true.
The tax dodge things, yeah. It's all right. I mean, I am not.
But if you're making $1 and you're giving 90 cents to the government in taxes, it's hard to conceive of something like that. As big as they were. I know that Paul talked about when they were Beatles at the height of their career. They used to get a pay packet of like $50 a week. Maybe $125 a week walking around money, just to have some change in your pocket.
Sure.
But if you wanted to buy a house or a car or something like that, they just send the bill to Apple. But those were really strange times. And,
dude, they were funky good times, man. I mean, in some ways. Sometimes, though, I mean, did it ever really affect Paul? Did he have to get pulled away from tours? Did it ever affect him on the bandstand as far as going through right at the beginning when it was still? Because also, and what was the reception? I'm fascinated. I have to believe that the crowds were pretty psyched, but it must have been a little bit interesting, the reception that you guys received, being that he was pioneering this thing outside of the Beatles.
Not really. When you get a chance to see Paul McCartney, the reception's always going to be wonderful. It's going to be, it might be a little bit better if all four Beatles are there, but we were received very warmly, and we really strived to make our show as good as we could make it. And by the end of my run with Paul and the band, by the time we did the university tour, the European tour, and a final British tour, at which point I left the band. But by that third tour, we were a pretty tight band that put on a really good show, and the fans got their money's worth for sure. We were proud of what we'd grown to.
but as we wrap up set 3 here, we've been cooking for another 72 minutes. I was in San Jose on the road about a couple weeks ago with great drummer Ronnie Beck, played with John Lee Hooker, and we were at this pretty upscale sort of jazz club. It wasn't even upscale. It was actually a very hipster kind of place. It was a very good vibe. And there was a Hammond B3 player in there, and a younger cat, a guy named Pat Bianchi, and he had normally he plays with Pat Martino, but he had 2 younger cats with him, and they were playing organ jazz. And about 2 songs in, I mean, I was pretty wiped, and Ronnie's like had triple bypass, and he's in his 60s. He could have stayed out all night. He was having such a ball. But, basically after the second tune of the second set, we got up and left because it was flat. The music truly, it didn't. And what I want to ask you is this: how do you still? And what Ronnie was talking to me about was you still have to be hungry. You have to be hungry and able to play burning music.
Thank you.
Okay. And over time, with lifestyle changes, or being more settled monetarily, or just feeling like, what else can I do? You sort of lose that edge. So I just want to talk to Denny Seiwell, talk to the peeps out there about.
That's when you become a real estate man.
Right. No, talk about the hunger. I mean, what is that? What does it mean, and how do you stay at that level of hunger?
I can be deathly ill. Put me on stage with people that I want to make music with, and I'm there. That's that hunger. I remember coming home after a knee replacement. And the first thing I did, I sent my wife, I said, would you go out and get some good food? I'm tired of this hospital food. Just go pick me up a burger or something.
Sure.
And as soon as she left the house, I got home from the hospital like a few hours before. I got on my walker, and I waddled my way into my music room, and I sat down behind the drums, and I played.
Wow.
Wanted to make sure that everything was still working. I'm only happy when I have a set of drums close, and now we live in a beautiful home wreck and have drums throughout the house, and I can play any time of the day or night I want. And I never used to have that before this home that we're in. But it's that hunger. I mean, if I don't sit down and commune with my drum set and play music that touches my soul and my heart, I could lose that hunger. And I don't sit around and practice, but I'll put a John Coltrane record on, or I'll put a Little Feat record on, or I'll put a Beatles record on, and I'll just play to it. And that's what keeps that alive. That's my soul. It lives, it thrives there, and nowhere else.
Yeah, because this music we saw was.
Oh, my wife just said, "Oh, what about me?"
Yeah, we're going to do an interview with her when I get out there. I mean, I don't want to leave her. She's not going to be neglected. She's been with you forever, and she can.
Yeah, she's a piece of work.
But you know what? It's like there's a difference between somebody like you just get people that are in a circuit and they've been doing something for a long time and they're very technically proficient at it, and they have kind of an interesting aura. But the music they don't sound hungry. Like that you really can hear that. You can hear that hunger, and it's just so.
Yeah.
And I just, how have you,
Well, that was one of the reasons I left Paul. I mean, there was a number of reasons, but I wasn't getting stale. I wasn't getting stale, but the hunger, when you're playing the same 30 songs for 4 years or whatever, the challenge isn't there, and that's why I was really challenged in my early days in New York, and even out here in L.A. I was challenged musically on a daily basis where I could keep growing, and I believe that's where the hunger comes from, when you have that willingness to keep growing, and something is pushing you to keep growing as a musician and an artist. The day that stops, then you might as well think about becoming a real estate man or something, you know. But
Right. Exactly.
you know, I'm blessed to have, you know, I grew up in a family with music, and music's been my life. I've never had a regular job in all my life, and
Mazel tov.
there's
Mazel
been some
tov to
great
that.
times, and there's been some really piss poor times as well, you know. And if you're not ready for all of that, and sometimes the poorest of times will make that hunger even deeper.
Oh, I think absolutely, as opposed to when it gets a little bit more like, you know, formulaic or something. You know, I mean, or, you know, you're just collecting a paycheck, you know. Also, how important is it for you to truly enjoy I mean, you talked about a great hang with this trio you have, but I mean, you how important is it to have great off the bandstand chemistry with the guys you're playing with?
Yeah. Well, living in LA is such a trip too, because you can it ain't like New York where you ran into everybody every day at Jim and Andy's, but out here there's a large musical community, and there's a lot of events that go on where you're sure to see a bunch of people, you know, that you don't see on a regular basis. And that's what really keeps it alive out here. And the longer you're a part of something like that, a musical community, the better it just keeps you inspired and keeps you in the game.
Because we live in this different strata now where you know, a CD gets released and then it may or may not get played on K-Jazz, or, you know, you don't have the traditional, like, how are you going to get this music to breathe? What are what is it? The Blue Whale? What clubs? I mean, you know, Herb Alpert's place is like a wine and cheese place. You know, it's like don't play above the din of the audience noise. Like where can the
Well, you know, I think that's changing too. But yeah, it was a beautiful jazz club. I played up there many times, and there was a sound. You really had to keep the levels down.
low?
But I think that is changing. And
Why do you say that? Why do you say that? Why do you think it's changing?
I just heard Pat Senador, who used to book all the music up there, who used to tell me Herb would come in and he'd just look over at the guys, and if there was more music, if there was more noise sound level coming off the stage than the knives and forks in the dining room, he'd say, "Hold it down, guys." Now, I don't want to be mean.
No. I didn't mean. I don't
want
want to single out vibrato. I thought you meant like on a more macro level that's changing as far as, like, you know, places.
Well, there are some good clubs out here, but my dream for this trio is to get out. We play a place called Bogies in Westlake. We play Catalina's. We've only played there once, and we played a couple of different. There's 3 or 4 fun jazz clubs where you can just go do what you need to do and play for yourselves as well as the audience. And that's probably the key, right? As long as you're playing for yourselves, the audience shall have a good time.
You're darn right about that. Wait, so when's your? I was at Bogies to see Garfield and Litcherwood back when I was hanging with Brown Nagel. When do you have a? I just want to know the dates you have so I can start doing some Gonzo.
We don't have anything booked right now. I've just been so completely taken with getting this record out there. I hope to get it out by April. So I'm talking to the label every day, and we're finishing up licensing agreements. We just did a cover shoot the other night, so I'm dealing with all of these aspects of it, and getting us up on the QVR website and stuff like that. So, but hopefully the plan is to release the album in the United States, in Europe, and in Asia at the same time, and we're looking to license the record to a distributor that can distribute the album in Europe and Asia at the same time we release it here in America. And I'm hoping that after this record comes out, to me it's groundbreaking in the jazz world.
Can you explain? Can you explain why? Well, explain why. Just because of the different rhythms, like the Moasir rhythms and stuff like that.
No, it's just so unique. It's in your face. It's not sleepy old jazz. It's not jazz trying to become pop or rock or smooth or any of that stuff. It's got its own world, and if we can get it on onto as many radio stations that'll be open to playing this kind of music. I think it'll be received really well by the public, because our audiences love it whenever we play it, and I feel it's very honest music and very challenging music, and I don't hear anything like it out there. And hopefully we can take it from the clubs now that we have something that's we've stepped it up a notch. We can get an agent that'll start booking us into performing arts centers and play some festivals and do that type of a thing rather than just hit the few jazz clubs that are around here. And if you play a jazz club here, they don't want to see you again for another 3-4 months. They want to keep. I would like to do a national jazz circuit tour. The Jazz Alley in San Francisco and the Blue Notes in New York and Yoshi's in San Francisco. Just do all the major cities and do a swing around the U.S. playing our music live for the people out there who are interested in something new coming along.
Well, I got to tell you, I mean, Tucson not so much, but Louis Nash, the great drummer, he's got a club in Phoenix called the Nash that would just be ideal for the Seiwell trio.
Great.
Yeah. So, and then if the Malibu gig with Bear goes down, is there a date on that? I mean, I got to come out to hang.
Let me see I think it's next month. I think it's March.
No, you can hit me with the date. Yeah, I'm curious. I'd love to get out there for that.
I'm pulling it up on my other phone right now. Yeah. February. No, not February. It's not in February, is it? Oh, no, wait. Jeez. Hang on a second. Oh, I'm all thumbs. Hang on a second.
Sure.
January, February 17th. Is that it? No. That's past. So it's March 17th. Yeah. March 17th is T-Bear gig with Route 66 at Casa Escobar in Malibu.
Yeah, I've heard about that place.
Malibu Pier.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Great band. We just do a lot of T-Bear's tunes, and it's kind of a rhythm and blues, soul, funky. It's a fun band. And actually, T-Bear just did a beautiful record with most of the cats in town playing on it. It's really produced by Tony Bronigal, and it's really a good record.
Yeah, I think they did it over at Johnny Lee Shell's house, didn't they? Maybe? I don't know.
Well, we did a lot of recording over at, I only played on 2 or 3 tracks of it. We did over at, I forget the name of it now, but it's Robbie Krieger's studio in Burbank.
Oh, yeah, Krieger.
Did some tracking
that's
there.
right.
Did some tracking at Ronnie Lee Shell's house. But it's a really a talented group of people playing on it. Guys like Ben Montench, Will Lee played on the track that I played on.
Finnegan might have played. No, maybe not. I don't know if Finnegan played.
I don't know if Finnegan
or
played
Fulcher.
On
Maybe
it.
there. Yeah, I don't know. But there's a lot of cats. I mean,
there was a lot of cats on that record. It's really a nice sounding record. Good tunes and great performances from everybody.
Before I let you go, did you ever play, or did you ever get to know any of the Crusaders?
Styx, I met Styx Hooper quite a few times.
Styx,
and,
yeah.
I recorded down at their studio.
Oh my God, the one that was run by Stuart Levine and those cats.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah. What was the name of that one called?
Geez, it was across from Marconi's on Selma.
Well, I mean, what sessions were that?
Hollywood Sound. Hollywood,
dude. What a great. I mean,
it was a great room.
Oh my God, what great sessions, man.
I did a Liza Minnelli record in there once. That was a trip.
And I'm looking for that Noakes. I'm looking for all these Mercurial Seiwell albums, but
yeah, that's it was called Tropical Nights, and we did a disco version, 13 pages long. I remember I strung the chart up between the 2 overhead mics, and I got a sore neck just reading from left to right, But it was Tropical Nights Bally High Disco. Oh, it was a piece of work. It really was. I'll never forget. Liza came running out of the studio. She said, "Guys, it doesn't go like that. It goes like this." and she started dancing. Yeah.
Well, Seiwell, listen, we'll do part 4 and possibly next Monday. I think we got one more session before I have to come and do a live one.
Okay.
All right.
Well, my wife has got putting on the makeup now she wants to be on camera.
Yeah, you let her know that we'll do.
She'll be in.
We'll have a great hang in person when I get out there, my man. Much love to you. Have a beautiful week, and yeah, let's shoot for part 4 next Monday.
Thanks, Jake.
Always the best. Thank you.
All right. Talk
Later
to you
on,
soon
man.
now.
Bye bye. Part 3 in the books with Denny Seiwell. We're almost done. We will take a day off tomorrow, I believe, and be back on Wednesday with 3 more guests. That's it for the Jake Feinberg Show. Until then, peace.